In this video, I'm going to create a patch from scratch with the drift synthesizer in Ableton Live. And this time my aim is to create a massive, big, wide stereo sound by using the Unison mode in the drift synthesizer and detune it, use the drift parameter, and of course some subtle modulation to create some variation. So Unison slightly detunes 4 voices for each note independently from each other. And in the drift synthesizer, you can assign how many voices you want to play, so you can determine the polyphony within the Unison mode. All right, let's get into Ableton and the drift synthesizer and let's see what we can make. So here in Ableton, I have a MIDI channel. I loaded up the drift synthesizer, the default settings. And if you go all the way to the right, you see mode. So there's polyphonic mode. You can play multiple notes, mono, where you only can play one note, stereo, and then there's Unison. And in Unison, there is this parameter of how much it is detuned. So by default, if I now play a C3, you can hear the difference with the polyphonic mode. If I now increase this parameter, the voices start to drift from each other or to detune from each other. And you get this wider kind of sound. So let's maybe put this at 70. Also increase the drift. We leave it at 32 because if you put it at 4 and each note uses 4 voices, which basically is monophonic. So now when you hold one note and then play another note, it cuts off the first note. Then 8 voices would be 2 notes at the same time, but we want 32 so we can play 8 notes at the same time, so we can actually play proper chords. Alright, now that the synthesizer is in Unison mode, let's play with the oscillators and the other settings of the synth. So the first thing I'm going to change is oscillator 2, put it to a square wave. Sounds even more full. Let's change the release as well to maybe 2 seconds and let's increase the attack. We can also play with the shape of the first oscillator. It's kind of a phasing, kind of chorusy effect. But this might be good to assign to one of the macros. Let's play a little bit with the filter. I think the filter is also something we want to modulate or assign it to one of the macros, because especially for variations, when you use this patch, you want to use the low pass filter to create this kind of threatening dark sound. Let's add a few effects. The first one, a saturator to beef up the sound a bit more. And also some reverb. So I just use the standard reverb and change some of the settings, maybe lower it a little bit and increase the decay. Give it a bit more room. So now in terms of sound, I think we're almost there. Let's compare it to the standard drift sound. So this is the standard sound. And this is what we created. Let's increase the release to 2.5 seconds. Especially when you play it on a lower octave. So now we're in C2. Maybe one note at a time is better than multiple. Especially when you go to C1. For this, we can also change it to 4 voices to make sure we don't play more than one note. All right, now that we have the basic synth sound, we have a saturator and a reverb effect. Let's group this into an instrument rack so we can assign some parameters for creating variations easily. So I'm going to group all these 4 items. The command G, group to instrument rack. And the first parameter I want to assign or map is the shape of oscillator 1 to macro number 1. And maybe I want to limit this to 0.5. Yeah, so this is what I was thinking, to assign the amount of voices also to a macro, but as you can see, that is not possible. What is possible is the filter, so let's do that. Map the filter to macro number 2, rename it to filter cutoff, like that. And of course we want to also have the detune of the unison mode as a macro parameter, the strength, unison strength. Let's keep it at 70 for now. And now we want to save this instrument rack so I can add it to my library of sounds, and every time I'm creating something new, I have this synth sound ready to go. Let's put in some MIDI notes and create a few different examples of how you can use this unison sound. So the first thing, I'm thinking big chords. Let's start with a C major 7. But of course we can also create short chords. In this way, you really use the unison patch as a lead sound, big chord, longer or shorter in sort of the C3 octave. But what if we go 1 or 2 octaves below and use it as a single note, just as a sound bed, kind of like what you have in movies, in action movies, or kind of dark movies where it can just be simmering, and maybe use some filter automation to create some movement in the sound. So maybe we want to create an 8-bar loop. And we want to create some filter automation. So let's show automation in new lane. So we can play with the filter cutoff. And let's create a very long note. I think 2 notes will be fine. Let's start at 150 Hertz and open up the filter in like 2 kind of steps. And maybe use the oscillator shape 1 as another modulation source for the second part, where we want to go a bit like this maybe. So these are 2 examples of how you can use the unison patch, one in a polyphonic way playing big chords, and in the second example as a monophonic synth lead with some modulation, create this dark, threatening kind of sound bed that's sort of inspired by movie soundtracks. So as you can see, the drift synthesizer in Ableton looks like a very simple synthesizer, but it's a very powerful tool for sound design. I have more videos on the drift synthesizer, so if you're inspired by this, go check those videos out as well. As always, keep making music, keep making synth patches. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.